The Hated Child, by the Tram series. Chapter 1. Eli stepped inside the house, his shoes making no sound on the worn wooden floor. It was quiet. Too quiet, and the silence seemed to stretch and suffocate him. He paused at the door, his hand lingering on the knob as if unsure whether to go forward or turn back. The smell of dust and old wood filled his nostrils, and the faint scent of something more pungent lingered in the corners, something that felt heavy, like the house was holding its breath, waiting for him to make the first move. He'd been here 1,000 times before, but tonight was different. Tonight he was a stranger in his own home. "Where have you been?" His father's voice sliced through the stillness, harsh and demanding. Eli didn't even need to look up to know the tone, tired, bitter, with a sharp edge of impatience. "I was just outside." Eli mumbled, his voice barely more than a whisper. He could feel the weight of his father's eyes on him, even though he didn't turn to face him. His father didn't answer immediately, but Eli could hear him shift in his chair, the creak of the old springs, the rustle of something unspoken in the air. There was a long, tense silence before his father's voice came again, laced with disdain. "Out there again, huh? Don't you ever get tired of running away?" Eli bit his lip, holding back the sharp retort that always burned in his throat. He wasn't running away. Not really. He was just trying to escape. Escape from the house that never felt like a home. Escape from the man who had never looked at him like he was anything more than an inconvenience. Eli took a step into the dimly lit hallway, the walls closing in around him. It wasn't just the space that made him feel trapped. It was the weight of his father's presence, always lurking in the background, always reminding him that he would never be enough. His father had always been the center of their world, loud, demanding, cold. And Eli, well, Eli was just the shadow in the corner, the child who could never measure up. The kitchen door creaked open, and Eli's mother, thin and worn down by years of discontent, stood by the stove, stirring something in a pot with a wooden spoon. Her eyes were downcast, her lips pressed into a tight, emotionless line. "Dinner's ready," she said, her voice flat like it had been for as long as Eli could remember. He nodded, though he wasn't hungry. It wasn't about the food. It never was. It was the suffocating silence that seemed to follow every meal, the way the air would hang heavy with tension, as if everything was broken in this house, and nothing could be fixed. Eli slid into his seat at the table, careful not to make a sound. His mother placed a plate in front of him, but he barely looked at it. The food was always the same, bland, tasteless, an afterthought. His mother's hands shook slightly as she set the fork down, her fingers thin and fragile like they'd been weathered by years of disappointment. Eli's father grunted from the other room. He was watching TV again, but the sound of the screen never reached Eli. It was like he lived in a world of his own, a world where Eli didn't exist. Eli was a reminder of something lost, something his father had never wanted. It wasn't that Eli had done anything wrong, it was simply that he wasn't what his father had hoped for. And that was enough. End of Chapter 1.